A friend of mine I'm sorry, I should repeat the question. That hideous strength, point out, goes kind of hand in hand with the abolition of man, which I can't remember who it was. I recently just emailed a friend out of the blue and said, when was the last time you read that? Because you have to read it again because it's all happening. A friend of mine observed years ago that until we have faces, which is one of C.S. Lewis's best, is really sort of a fictional telling of the four loves, which is an interesting way of approaching it. And I think the entire science fiction trilogy of C.S. Lewis, and especially That Hideous Strength, is a fictional telling of the abolition of man. And so in the abolition of man, he has kind of the philosophical approach to that. I read that when I was in college. That was a life-changing book for me, The Abolition of Man. But That Hideous Strength really is C.S. Lewis saying, let me show you what it looks like. Not just the philosophy. Let me show you what it looks like, because ideas need to be concretized. Right. Okay, meaning requires limits, and so how does that shape our understanding of the limitless, who is God? I think when we say that he's limitless, we're using our terms to describe him. I don't think it really gets at what we mean by when we say he's limited. He's infinite. He is beyond our comprehending. And so when we speak of limits, we have the concrete world in mind. To say that God is limitless, we can't use those terms univocally to describe limitless here and limitless there, because he's beyond being, really, I think. But thank you. Absolutely. Right. A willingness to be limited. Right. I think we capture it. She wraps him in swaddling clothes. And he is limited there. And by so doing, he gives meaning. He just charges the world with meaning in that. And also it speaks to, what do Adam and Eve not like? They don't like being limited. Well, why can't we eat from that tree? You just don't want us to be like gods, right? They rebel against their limits, and sort of the cure for that, the way that's redeemed, is he takes on our limited human nature, and of course makes it capable of more.
You said that when you were in college, you talked to me, but you didn't. Was that something wrong with Holy Cross or Catholic knowledge? And do you have any recommendations?
Yeah, that was a problem with Holy Cross, because they had taken the multiculturalism lure, hook, line, and sinker. All they talked about was multiculturalism, and then building up the community. So, well, you've got these things are competing against themselves here. So there was no principle of unity, because once you establish a principle of unity, what do you have? You have a limit. Right? And if people aren't willing to be limited in that way, then they're not really willing to enter into community. So honestly, the Catholic Church is the only institution that's capable of being so-called multicultural. Because only the Catholic Church has the perfect principle of unity. Which is why, medieval Europe is such an extraordinary thing, where you have all of these vastly different cultures united in one faith. And St. Thomas Aquinas, who's bouncing between Italy, Germany, and France, and feels at home in any place, that is because of the Church's bringing all of these in, and she can do that because of that principle of unity, because everything is focused on our Lord. And they all spoke Latin. Right.
Thank you for your remarks tonight. You spoke, examined the expressive,
By which you mean?
The way that architecture is meant to instruct us, to teach us.
Yes. So how does architecture instruct? Gaudi's Sagrada Familia in Barcelona, if you've seen it, on the spires it says Sanctus, Sanctus, Sanctus. That's not how architecture should teach. Because the whole point of architecture is you shouldn't be using words, right? It should be something that people get. You shouldn't have to tell me, look, this is holy. I should get it. It should speak to me almost immediately. I think we can make an analogy here with the liturgy, and let me just take it as an example. A secular liturgy. If you've ever seen a full honors military funeral, it's good liturgy. And you have all of these things that you don't understand, and and no Marine ever stops and let me explain this to you, and nobody they don't have a program for you. What's the matter with them, right? But you have the riderless horse, the boot in the stirrup backwards, no idea, and then you have the procession down, and you have the 21 gun salute, you have the playing of taps. It's incredibly moving, and nobody ever says, well, can we have Amazing Grace instead of taps? Okay, because they know that there's something about this that teaches them and forms them on a level deeper than just the intellectual. And I think that's how architecture should do it. I think there should be a sense of awe, a sense of being inspired. That's what a good architect, which sacred architecture should strive for. And sacred, by the way, is different from tasteful. Because one of the things that I've noticed, there's one church in another diocese that I have in mind is it's very tasteful, and people come in and say, "Oh, this is really nice," and it is nice, it is tasteful, but you don't have a sacred sense about it. And so I think it can't be with words, it can't be by a lecture or instructions, but it has to be in the way things are shaped, the colors, and all of that forms in the people who come to it a sense of the sacred, a sense of its purpose for worship, and a sense also of their purpose. Some years ago, I was in England, and I was amazed to find that the great. I was visiting which great cathedral anyway. They all blurred into one great, English medieval cathedral. But it was, I was shocked to learn that the outside of it was bright red. And they had, chips of paint that said, yeah, these all would have been painted. And you can see some of the painting in the vaults of the cathedrals. For us, bare stone speaks sacred, right? Because we live in a culture that has colors all over the place, and we have all of this, our eyes are being stimulated with colors all the time and different images. So for us, the other, the sacred, is kind of the bare stone. But boy, if you're a peasant in England, boy, 9 months of the year it's just drab, And you come over a hill and you look down a valley and you see the Salisbury Cathedral, and it's this red. You go, wow! But you also know that's mine. It doesn't belong to this set of people. I'm at home there, and I think that's another thing that should be communicated in a church. And it's a tough thing. Fear of the Lord should convey that reverence but there should also be piety conveying that feeling that I've come home, and I'm at home here, and I can find here my Lord Himself. So, okay. Oh, one last question.
Well, with your last remarks, I thought you were saying in a derogatory sense about churches, present-day churches, parishes, tucked away in residential areas. And maybe I'm sensitive to that because I've been in different parishes. But I thought that would be a true sense of community if the church were embedded in the...
Yeah. No, and there is something to that. So the church is being sort of embedded in, subdivisions. The greater problem isn't really where the church is. The greater problem is that our communities don't have any locus. They don't have any center. I love it. You have, we'll proclaim it a town center. Okay, well, just you're proclaiming it doesn't make it the town center, all right? I grew up in McLean, Virginia. I don't know what the center of McLean is. And various places, I think, claim it. St. John's. But, this is actually, one of the things that I think is most fascinating is, I talked about how it used to be the sacred buildings that would occupy the center of a community, and then it was sort of the government buildings. And I quipped that, maybe the shopping malls. Well, actually, no, they're having a hard time of it. Because of online shopping, not even the shopping malls can claim that. And maybe it's the last gasp is the sports arena, but that progression actually speaks of how more and more fractured the community is that even in the secular world, or especially there, we don't have a common focus. And it's because everything is lived virtually. Okay. Thank you.